People say habits help with making you more productive. But why? How do I avoid distraction? How can you make procrastination disappear from the picture altogether? Over the past few years, I've experimented with many different habits. Some of them have been part of my life for a while, while others are more fresh. In this video, I want to talk to you about the 7 habits that made me a happier, more productive, and more creative maker. So perhaps you can think about how these things could affect you too. In the end, the pain of regret is much greater than the pain of doing the hard work you set out to do. So let me tell you about the few things that I do, the couple of mindsets I think about as a maker to get through my days in an optimal way. So let's go! I think motivation can sometimes be like a flame. It burns big and fast and is full of energy, but it moves very quickly and disappears. And in order to make something great, you need to put in the reps, some of them quite boring, and I would compare that to a hot searing coal that stays hot for much longer than the flame. That hot searing coal starts at the 5-minute rule. I first heard about this watching one of Ali Abdaal's videos. This rule states that you don't wait for motivation to come. You just tell yourself that you will sit down and work for 5 minutes because, at least in my case, the hardest part about doing anything is starting. What is interesting with this technique, once you do the 5 minutes, you start building momentum. That momentum often pushes past the 5-minute goal and you want to continue doing whatever you were doing for longer. So instead of watching a motivational video and accidentally ending up on a 30 to 60 minutes binge of YouTube videos, and yes, I've done this in the past, give yourself a small goal of working for just 5 minutes, because the hardest point of doing anything is the beginning. And what you might find is that once you begin building momentum, it gets easier and easier to keep going. There is another point that goes really well with this 5-minute rule, and I've left it until the very end of the video because I want you to remember it the most. So just remember, 5 minutes is better than nothing. Now there are 2 subsections to this point. The first one is a mental shift that had a big impact on the way I approach things. The concept of the producer over consumer mindset comes from the book Millionaire Fastlane. Talk about cheesy titles. It is about shifting one's priority from being a consumer of products and services to being a producer of value. This means creating something of value that others want or need, rather than simply consuming what others have produced. By adopting a producer mindset, one can start to create freedom rather than being stuck in a cycle of consumption, followed by working to be able to afford this consumption. So in my world, this is how I approach this. When I wake up and begin my day, instead of checking my email, Twitter and Instagram, I start by making something that is an output. I open up my notepad on my computer and write down the things that I'm grateful for. I record how long I slept for, and I try to work on writing the next YouTube video for at least, say, 20 minutes. Checking email and social media accounts is allowed only after some creation is attempted. And no, I'm not perfect at this yet. I make mistakes, but practice makes perfect. And now the second subsection of this part is make. This is pretty self-explanatory, but in order to grow as a maker, you have to make. There is a great analogy out there that you can't learn to ride a bicycle by watching a video on how to ride. Yes, this video can help you with useful tips on how to begin, but eventually you will need to go through the motions in order to learn how to balance. So dive into the process and just begin. Done is better than perfect, as my wife says. Create many versions of things. With each one, you will learn something new. I have used this approach to learn cooking, woodworking, photography, painting, and now I'm applying this to my YouTube videos. In each iteration, I try to make just one tiny thing a little bit better. And with enough repetition, you become a master. So remember, just make, and then repeat infinite number of times. The more time you spend, the more reps you do, the more repetitions you do, the better you get. I have noticed over the years that a lot of people see the end of their education period as an end to learning. And my educational experience was somewhat mixed, because I really enjoyed diving deep into some topics while others I struggled with, because things that didn't spark my curiosity were difficult to focus on. I couldn't wait to get out of school to start learning about the things that actually interested me. I remember this specific moment in grade 10 back in Adelaide, Australia, where I had to write an essay about a particular topic. And within that topic, there was a subtopic that I wanted to do a deeper dive on, but I couldn't. I didn't have the time because I needed to finish the assignment, and the rest of the homework pile was huge. And so I remember thinking, gosh, if only I had the time to find out about that other thing. And now that I'm not in school anymore, I can set my own curriculum. I just have to follow my curiosity. I believe that nobody should ever stop learning new things. Find ways to spark curiosity. Now, reading is a great way to find inspiration, motivation, to learn, and it's by far the cheapest, most effective to learn. Reading is one of my longest lasting habits. It has made me into a better communicator. It taught me many important skills in life. And here are some books for makers worth checking out. Every Tool is a Hammer, Pattern Language, the Kleon series, and War of Art. I remember when I first started reading books, I still struggled with complex English terminology, as English is my second language. And a lot of the information I was reading about didn't completely make sense. And so some things I understood out of context. For others, I had to pause and translate. And then I had the problem of falling asleep after just a few minutes of reading, no matter what time of day it was. Also, sometimes I would go through 3, 4, 5 books before I found the one that I could stick with, that was actually in text, that was easy to consume, and I was never afraid of abandoning a text partway through. There's no reason to torture yourself, just make it fun. If you aren't used to reading books, start with whatever topic interests you. It can even be a fiction book, it can be a short book. Just to get you started so you don't encounter too many obstacles. Just get excited to read. And maybe just leave your electronics in a different room. The fast dopamine inducing smartphones are an incredible distraction when reading. One final thing I want to say about my most recent level up in reading books has been highlighting books on Kindle and then exporting those highlights into my note-taking app called Notion, and then writing some notes about these books so that I can easily go back to the knowledge whenever I want to or I need to. Now when I'm bored somewhere, I can get my phone out and read my book notes to refresh my memory about a topic instead of doom scrolling social media. So yeah, get curious and start reading. So you probably heard this a gazillion times before. Exercise is a great way to clear your mind, to let go of some emotions. It's healthy for you. And getting that heart rate up is a great life extension hack. But the main thing I wanted to convey here is that as a maker, there are times when you need to lift and carry heavy things around, and it is a common way for people to get injured. There had been seasons in my life where I had regularly gone to the gym, maybe like 3 to 5 days per week. I did this mainly for health and strength, but what I didn't know at the time that I do know now is this. Sure, weightlifting helps you build strength, but more importantly, it has an ability to teach you about how to maintain the correct posture when lifting heavy things in different scenarios. It is insane to me how many people I see in the construction industry that lift heavy objects repeatedly with a rounded back. So think about getting a trainer even just once a week just to learn how to lift, how to keep your back straight, because it's a life skill that has stayed with me ever since I stopped lifting weights at the gym. Recharge time, boredom time. It is a pit stop for the brain and body. When you are always running in a hamster wheel, you don't get a chance to assess if you are running in the right direction. A problem that I'm currently trying to correct for and get better at is where I jump at the first solution to a problem that pops into my head, instead of spending that little bit of time before I start to figure out what to do. When you take time to recharge, you get time to think. You actually get to live a little. You can think about the things you are happy about, the things that could be a little bit better. A time to recharge is a time to do a deep dive into a book. Time to spend some time with our loved ones. So make time for life in your week. Take a holiday. So what do I mean about gamify things? I want to use an example when I'm learning Spanish on Duolingo. In Duolingo, there's those things called streaks. So if you do a lesson each day, you basically build a streak. So right now I'm on streak of 277 days in a row. And that's actually a funny little game to just keep you going, to build momentum, to keep you in the game, to keep learning. So start a streak and then work as hard as you can not to break the streak. So you can design little games like that for yourself. Another way to gamify things is if you are performing a boring task. Right now what I'm doing is painting some soffit on a house, and it's very boring. So I try and play games with myself where I try and do the painting as efficiently as possible, and I see how quickly I can do it in a day. So if you're performing a boring task, you can break it up into chunks and try to get something done as quickly as possible or as smoothly as possible. And there are many other games you can play. You can probably look up something and you can probably think of a game you can play with yourself to get through the tasks that you need to do. The most game-changing habit out of the ones that I've implemented over the past couple of years is choosing the one thing. Prioritize. Decide on what's the most important thing in the day and make the decision one day earlier. I typically do this in the evening. There's this quote from James Clear that says, "One of the most critical skills in life, and yet never taught in school, is choosing where to direct your attention." I've noticed from working on many different projects over the years that when you are working on something, you are in the flow of things. You know what the next step is, you are there, you know what supplies you need, what tools you are going to use for the next step ahead. So I suggest to you, when you stop at the end of the day, make a plan for the next time you're going to resume your work. I've had a number of times where I didn't make a plan, the list of tasks to do on that day was large, and it felt so overwhelming that it was difficult to know where to start. Sometimes I have no concept of what tools are required, and my tools are at home, the job site is somewhere else, and I'm not there, and I can't remember what exactly I'm going to need, and there are materials missing that I could have acquired before starting with my day in order for the day to run smoother. But when you are in the middle of your day, head deep down in a project, you know exactly what task follows the one you are currently working on, so it's a good idea to think about what comes next. Developing habits involves doing something each day, no matter how small, until you don't even have to think about it anymore. By aligning things in your life in a certain way, you create systems that help you build momentum instead of disrupting yourself. Of course, there are other habits I continuously experiment with. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below and perhaps I will make another one of these in the future. Thanks for getting through this whole video with me. Click over here to check out another one of my videos. Bonus tip, clean up to declutter your workspace, which by extension is your mind, especially if you feel stuck. I do this all the time if I feel stuck.